I think we'll see, these really smart tools and AI really take over, more and more functionality and have a bigger impact. Not just it's going to have a bigger impact in our lives in many ways, but in vacation rentals, I think it's going to be really, really interesting. Much more advanced search. So on the platforms, on Airbnb, on Vrbo, like very advanced search coming, which is going to allow guests and potential guests to really dial in what they're looking for.
Hi, I'm Wyatt.
And I'm Grace.
And you're listening to our dad and your host of the Vacation Rental Revolution podcast.
What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Vacation Rental Revolution podcast. I'm your host, Sean Moore, and I'm really, really excited about the conversation we're about to have today. Everyone's talking about AI and how short-term rental platforms are able to respond quicker and better. But what hasn't been getting a lot of attention is how AI is going to power these platforms to become one-stop shops with all the services, tools, and everything under one roof. And we've got a brilliant guest joining us today that can explore this topic in a lot more detail than I can with you. We've got Jeremy Gall, founder of Breezeway, joining us today. So Jeremy, thank you so much for joining us on the Vacation Rental Revolution podcast.
Awesome. Hi, Sean. How are you? Thanks for having us today. Super excited to be here and chat with you about technology and vacation rentals.
Awesome. Love it. And then, like I said, I would got to bring the experts in because that's definitely not my strong suit, I would say. So I'm really excited about this conversation and then tapping into the hot topic. Breezeway's been around for a little while. And so you guys are, you've been in the business for a long time, kind of one of the staple solutions out there for a lot of owners and operators that are in this game. But take us back a little bit to, what background you come from, what led you into the short-term rental game and founding Breezeway, and like let's dial back the clock a little bit and start there if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. It depends how much time we have, how far back we want to go, but I won't go too far back. I think, early in about 2005, I was thinking about starting a company with a couple of friends here in Boston. We were looking at utilization of property and, condos in the city that didn't get used a lot while people were traveling. And we thought about, how could we help make that better? Marketplace sharing economy was a new sort of terminology. And I went to a Vacation Rental Managers Association, a VRMA conference, and heard about how, professional managers, at the time we called them RBOs, rent by owners, nobody called them hosts, and about how RBOs were in this big battle with professional managers. RBOs were going to list on their own. It's going to take away all this professional inventory. And together, with my co-founders, we thought, gee, if people could have guest reviews and you could be on a website and you could see what reviews were and ratings for all these properties, it would help consumers. And if you were professional, that would help separate you from some people who weren't professional, no matter whether they're businesses or hosts and small managers. It was about who could really just provide the best service.
Right.
And then that rise to the top for consumers. So we started a company called FlipKey in the vacation rental space. We did a partnership and eventually an acquisition with TripAdvisor and Expedia, and sold that company there. But we worked with hundreds of thousands of listings all around the world. And a lot of those folks became my friends, these operators. And I started talking to them afterwards about how do they run their business and what about taking care of the property and what's all the work you do to get the guest? Because then I thought professionalism is really going to take off. And anyway, so we started Breezeway to be a platform to really help people professionalize the operational side of the business.
Yeah, it's awesome. And so what years were that? I got into this game in 2006 and it was an entirely different game back then as well. Like I was using Craigslist and, local classifieds to book our properties. And so when you started going through that, obviously the industry's matured significantly since when you started, but what were those years that you started doing that?
Yeah, so 2006 was when we basically started FlipKey. Okay. Ran that until 2013. Totally right. Like it was not just because of your hat, but it was kind of like Wild West back then. It was wild. People were listing on Craigslist. You'd show up. Sheets were optional. You didn't know if you needed to bring your own toilet paper to a rental. Nobody paid online. You couldn't book. People, your listeners probably don't, people depending on their age don't even know this, but like 2006, no online booking.
Yeah.
It didn't exist yet. It sort of started in 2007, 2008, but everything was checks. People were still mailing brochures. You'd have to set your rates at the beginning of the year, right? And then make sure that you had it totally set, because then you would
the brochure was accurate.
You take all your guests from years past and you would mail them a brochure and hope that they've rebooked. And so the pricing was what, it was fixed. It's totally fixed.
Yeah. It was a totally different game. And it's been fun watching the industry really mature. And then really kind of, I'm fascinated, like to the story of, you guys, when you started your company and really talking to the people and saying, hey, listen, how do we raise the bar? It really starts with those conversations of saying, how does it become more professional? How do we raise the bar to where not only hosts and managers and everybody else, and then ultimately raises the bar for that guest experience, and that bar continues to raise, and so it's really cool to talk to somebody that's been in the game for as long as you've been in it, to see that industry mature like it has. It's very, very rare that we talk to guys that have been in as long as dating back to 2006. So it's really fun for me.
Yeah, I don't know if that's good or bad. It makes me feel a little.
I know. All that. Those of you watching on YouTube, you see the gray hair for me. So it's definitely there.
I think it's interesting though, right? I think part of what I was thinking before Breezeway was, the marketing channels were becoming very established. I think it's changed a little bit, and there's opportunity for a few more, but the marketing side was becoming really established, which was, if you were a host, you had one property or very few properties, you had Airbnb, you had VRBO, you had Booking, you had TripAdvisor, and then you had a few other channels that were sort of like also ran. If you were a large company, you had those channels for advertising, and then you had your own website. And it was kind of like, I felt like that problem was sort of fixed, but you also had Expedia cross-listing vacation rentals with hotels.
Yeah.
Airbnb buys Hotel Tonight. So you've got Airbnb and hotels kind of like, and it just seemed very obvious that there was going to be this convergence between hotels and vacation rentals. And then you think to yourself, okay, I need to deliver a hotel-like hospitality experience that is super predictable. It's like really dialed in, right? Everything's perfect. You go into a Hilton, Four Seasons, the trash can's in the same spot every time. I need to bring that level of standard to a portfolio of really unique properties where every property is different. It's a heavy burden, and the guest has fallen in love. I think the other part that's like really interesting, right? The guest has fallen in love with a specific home. When they show up, if you're a manager and you have 10, you can't just push them into another one the same way a hotel says, well, why don't you, we'll get your room ready by 4:00. It's got to be that specific house. So you just have this like deep operational burden. And I thought consumers are expecting more as well. Those guest expectations go up. It's not a super large, not a super high margin business. So you got to be careful about what your expenses look like. And the more efficient you can run, the better off you be.
And that's what gave the idea and where Breezeway started off then, right? To say, okay, listen, we've got to be able to help hosts be able to give this predictable experience that's the same every time, right? That's what the expectations are of the guests nowadays, right? We know, like I always say, hotels are, they might not be the most unique experiences like we can deliver with short-term rentals, but they're very predictable, and people like predictable. And so we've got to take that level of predictability into our portfolios, which is what you guys decided to start with Breezeway, right? And so we can kind of educate the people who are listening that might not be familiar with what Breezeway is. There's a lot of property management software tools out there that help a host or management companies, if they've got multiple properties, to kind of manage their properties across platforms and market them and bookings and all those different things. Breezeway is more of an operational platform. Is that correct?
That's exactly right. And it's really, people might not know this. I didn't. In 2005, I didn't know. So I knew this when I was starting Breezeway, but before that, I didn't know it. when you walk into a hotel like the Hilton, there's one Goliath piece of software that like runs the front office. So that software helped power how you booked, what the rates were, how that unit, how all those rooms in that hotel were distributed to the GDS and to a whole bunch of different channels. And then there's another piece of software, huge incumbent in the hotel space, that runs all the operations, that runs housekeeping, runs cleaning, runs services, runs food and beverage. And then on top of that, hotels run on, maybe another 16 to 20 pieces of software that do very specific things. And when I looked at vacation rentals, I had the benefit at FlipKey, we'd done 40 or 50 property management software integrations. I knew how these systems worked. And so you think to yourself, okay, I have vacation rentals are more complicated than hotels. I've got a bigger operational burden than hotels. And yet I don't have a piece of software that's dedicated to the operational, like back office work that's really optimized to help me do that. It just felt like a real opportunity to say, great, let's partner with the PMS systems. Let's keep them focused on the front office. There's so much stuff they can do to help you with pricing, to help you with distribution, help you with interesting ways where you can book your rentals and how you're going to do it. And let's take some of that burden and let's build an operations tool that says, this is how you're going to care for the property. This is how you're going to clean it. This is how you're going to manage scheduling, maintenance. This is how you're going to do asset management and show the owner that you really care about their property. Or if you're the owner and it's just one home, how are you going to really dial this in so you can keep up with the professionals and do a great job?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I always say that kind of managing short-term rentals, it's one of the drawbacks of this asset class. It's the Achilles heel of the business, if you will. I outsource all the management on my properties. And I always tell people I don't outsource it for the front end marketing side of it. That side, I feel like there's a lot of tools that can dial that in pretty well. I feel like we can get involved in that. I don't particularly like the operational side because if we've ever got involved in it, it was all very manual and spreadsheets and this and that and the other. And it was, and we never tapped into a software tool like Breezeway where we were able to, feel like, okay, we can actually handle this. So we just hand it off to the professionals is what we do. But there's a lot of our listeners who are, they're like, man, I love doing certain things, but the operation side, most people don't like the operations side of the business. And that's where Breezeway steps in though. In really, like, we've got a high-end mastermind group. We've got a lot of listeners in like regular communities and stuff. And I know a lot of them use Breezeway and have said how many times to me, man, it really helps us on that operational side. It really helps us organize, keep things in track. Things don't slip through the cracks. The T's are crossed, the I's are dotted. And I think that sometimes when we do all this stuff, we forget about, in any business, operations is really what kind of keeps it going, right?
Oh, it's incredible. And like, this is property management it's a service business. And I don't think a lot of people like to think about that either, but hospitality is a service business, and this one's complex, and it's extra complex because you have to handle what's going on with the guests, and you also have to answer to your owners. If you're working with more than one owner, you have two different constituents that you have to keep busy, you have to keep happy, and that takes a lot of work. And so, I think what it allows people to do is, we don't typically, and we'll get into this with, AI and technology as well. Like, the goal is not necessarily to replace people, but the goal is to be able to say, great, you're in the hospitality business. Let's just transfer some of your energy, the human energy that you're putting into it. Let's make sure you get the benefit of that. And let's put it forward into your service in a hospitality fashion, in the grunt work, the organizational work. Like, let systems help you be better at that.
That's awesome. So let's dive into that. Let's dive into the AI side of life. And I mean, it's you want to talk about a hot topic right now across the board with everything, right? And I haven't had we were joking a little bit before we hit play, and I was telling you, I've messed around with Chat GPT for like help me with headlines and stuff, but that's about it. And I know how powerful those different tools out there can be. And it sounds like you guys are figuring out how to integrate them into some of the systems and software tools that are already established as great operational tools to, like, just like you said, let us take back the hours and the time that we have to do the things that those software tools can't do. So the human element, let's apply it where we're going to get the biggest bang for our buck in the hospitality space.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I'll take one step back. We made it a good 15 minutes without saying Chat GPT, which is awesome.
That is good.
Step back. When we started Breezeway, one of the things that we wanted to do a little bit differently was think about the property profile and think about the relationship that you as an owner, if you're a host and you're self-managing, or if you're a property manager and you do it on behalf of other people, that property is really your product. Like, that home is your product and the service that you deliver around it, right?
Right.
But the home itself is so unique and special. It's central to the vacation rental experience. People fall in love with those homes. They go on their trip. That home, you go to the Outer Banks, you go to coast of Texas, like, this home is like a big part of, it's where you're going to have all your meals. It's where you're going to play games. Yeah. It's like, this is it. And so that home is really central. And what we found was that there weren't really deep property profiles about these homes anywhere. So you didn't really have them on your mark. Airbnb's got pretty good stuff when you build your listing. They start to capture more and more information. Now it's becoming a lot more structured. The PMS system doesn't really have too much stuff of that. And nobody, including Airbnb and VRBO, nobody has, like, the really detailed stuff. Like, how many TVs do you have?
Right.
How many bedrooms do you have TVs in? And, like, where do you keep the remote? Or what's the make and model of your hot water heater and your dishwasher and your washer and dryer? And, like, stuff that doesn't sound all that sexy and exciting. But if you want to deliver a consistent, great experience, you need to know that stuff, because if it breaks, you don't have the luxury of saying to your guest, hey, we're not fixing the HVAC for 3 days.
Right.
Got to get somebody there and they got to fix it quick. So we built Breezeway originally around this, like, deep property profile and a really structured property profile. And I'm going to bring this forward all the way to ChatGPT. I'd love to say I was smart enough back then to think that, like, we would be using something like ChatGPT and machine learning for that. We did think that the structured data would help us do some special things. And really, that's what it is coming down to now, which is, ChatGPT and AI and these sort of systems, they're only as good as the information that you can feed them.
Yeah.
And if you can't feed them, if you feed them a whole bunch of garbage that they can't understand, then you're going to get garbage in, garbage out. But if you can feed it structured information, it's incredibly powerful what it can then do with that to answer questions, to read through that, draw connections between the structured information. And that's where we're really starting to find some unique value that we can provide at Breezeway. So I guess my head starts to go to how you actually use that, and when you say you've got, a deep property profile where you've got a lot of data as far as, TV makes and models and everything else. So just go back to, hey, I've got a guest that doesn't understand how the remote works or how the TV turns on. If that property profile is detailed enough, you're saying that the AI learning tools can go dive into all that information and be able to quickly answer those questions for the guest. And it's almost instant, right? And they're like, hey, try this, do this, turn it on here. And versus us having to manually answer those questions. Hey, I can't get the fan to turn on or turn off or whatever. And so is that how you'd use it there? That's exactly right. And I think a lot of systems weren't built this way. A lot of systems were built with custom fields. A lot of property management software systems were built this way with custom fields, which makes sense because property managers do things differently, right? And you do it a little bit differently than somebody else. So it makes sense to give you a lot of customization. But then the problem is, like, I don't know what field you've decided to put the Wi-Fi password in.
Yes.
I don't know what it's called. And so if I don't know what field it's in and I don't know what it's called, I can't pull up that information very easily. And so that's exactly right. Like, the system, ChatGPT is incredibly good, right? It's just digesting volumes and volumes of information, so much information. They've already trained it to talk like to respond
Like a human.
Natural language like a human, right? Because it's read so many things that it knows how to write sentences like a human out of the box. Now all it needs is context and some content. So once you can start to give it some context about what you're trying to do, and then you can feed it specific content around that, things like Wi-Fi password, things like where to find where to find the keys, who to call if you're having trouble with access, things like that. It's really able to surface through a lot of that information. We started as an operations platform in 2019. We launched a messaging product because we knew that the operations was tied really closely to how you communicate with a guest. So we have a whole separate messaging product that helps people communicate with the guests through automated and then personalized messaging. And then this year we launched a guide, which is a property guide where you can feed us more information about your rules. You can marry that with property data, like what's actually in the home, and put in front of the guest like a really nice guidebook. But then we've trained, we call it, it's part of our Assist product, Assist AI, so that you can do suggested replies, and that suggested replies reads through your reservation data, all your property data, the information that we have about the guide, which is your company information and your policies. And then it just pops through some suggested replies in a really, really powerful way.
Yeah, it's interesting when you're talking, like my head goes to, and I was thinking of that when you mentioned that, is this is more than just the guidebook, right? Like at least what I'm hearing when you're talking is we could really use this as sort of our 24/7 concierge. Like you probably feed it in anything you want. I'm assuming like, hey, here's our favorite restaurants. You could ask it, almost just like a concierge would, whether it's a problem with the house, turning the remote, how to turn the fan on or off, or how to use the hot tub if it's locked or whatever. All these different things. I was just having a conversation with with an owner earlier today, and he was saying, man, one of my biggest problems with communication is the hot tub. I'm always having to teach people how to use the hot tub. And so that could solve that problem, right? Because it's going to know the make, the model, how to use it. But also, what a great guest experience if you've got a platform or somewhere you could go and have a 24/7 concierge recommending some of the best restaurants or activities, or, what you can go do around the area as well. I'm guessing, which is ultimately we have that in our guidebook as well. But sometimes people want to ask somebody things.
100%. They kind of want to read it, but they don't. But I think this is the benefit of what we do. Again, it's a complicated business, and by focusing just on this, we're able to approach, we think, and I think our clients think so as well, agree, like we approach these problems in a novel and new way. So for example, the guidebook, when you open up the guidebook, it knows where you are in the guest journey. So
right.
Pre-arrival, if you open up that link pre-arrival, and it gets sent to you via text link, if you open up that link pre-arrival, it's going to show you the directions to the property and access and Wi-Fi. If you go back to that link, and it's after arrival, all that content dynamically shifts. We don't have to send you the directions anymore. You can still get there. You can navigate your way there, but that content has dynamically shifted to start showing you things like recommendations and important things you need to know about the property. And as you move closer to checkout, if you hit that link again, it switches again, and it just pulls up the right information at the right time. And that's a new way that people haven't totally approached it. And as we start to leverage more AI in that product, we'll start personalizing that even more depending on the guest and how they've interacted with the guide, what we continue to serve them as far as content to make it easier. But you're right, at base, Sean, people, they might read it, but then they still love to ask a question.
Yeah.
So the quicker you can the quicker you can answer the questions, the better off you are.
For sure. And do they think that does the guest feel like they're speaking to somebody, or do they feel like, is it pretty obvious that they're talking to like a chat bot or a AI tool?
No, I think they feel like they're speaking to someone, because at the moment they are basically, think of it, there's a few layers to this, which are one, you can set pre-canned messages through the messaging product.
Yeah.
So you're going to put in personalization. You're going to put in a token like, hey, Sean, we're welcome. We're so excited you're going to be staying with Breezeway, blah, blah, blah. And that can feel like might feel a little canned, but it feels like a regular personal message.
Right.
If you write back, somebody in the office could pick up and they could respond.
Yeah.
And they'll send you a message back, and it'll be a real person from within the client, or they could be using the suggested reply that ChatGPT and Breezeway helped serve up. Or we've added another layer, which is our own people, our own real people, humans, not fake robots, but real people who are trained in Breezeway, and they're trained on your service level agreement and the way that you interact and how you want to answer questions. And they know within Breezeway where to find information. And so you can supplement the AI with our own people too. And they will, all hours of the day, 24/7, they will respond to messages on the client's behalf. And if it's an emergency or it's something that needs to be escalated, then they'll call you and they'll make sure you know about it.
Are those all settings within because those are a lot of different layers of ways to respond? Who decides so that they don't get 4 responses, one from the AI tool, one from a person, who decides that?
Yeah, you set that up. It sounds like I made it sound a little more complicated than it is, but that is all settings you configure within Breezeway. And it's pretty clear. You won't run the risk of those duplicating, because you'll either set your after hours support if you want us to help answer it. They won't see any of they won't engage until that clicks over, and then you'll go.
Right.
But you'll see, no matter who answered, you'll see it in one continuous stream within the Breezeway account, and it'll be clear to you, how that interaction was run.
Yeah,
which is pretty cool.
It's awesome, and I think that as these learning tools that like you just said, they can consume volumes and volumes of information, right? Which is why they can actually respond faster and better than a lot of us can just manually, and so and more accurately than a lot of us can manually. If somebody calls. Now, I don't manage all my own properties, but I can't imagine a property manager understands how to run every single hot tub in every single cabin, right? Or, and so they're going to probably have to be like, hey, hold on a second, let me look it up. Like the guest is going to get a faster and better answer a lot of time from these learning tools.
Yeah, 100%. And then that's just, that's one way to use it. There's other ways that we're including in the product, which are like smart scheduling, right? And so trying to figure out, sounds like it shouldn't be that complicated. But if you're running a couple of properties and you need to turn them over all pretty quickly on a Saturday to get your next guests in, it is a complicated dance of how you get that work done and how you piece it together. And something is always dynamically changing. Guest wants to come early, somebody's canceled, or they moved out their reservation. One of your service partners can't work that day, or your cleaner can't work that day. So you're always like mixing and matching these pieces together. And it takes a lot of human effort to do that. But increasingly, because we have all this information, we know how you want to work. We know the work that you want to get done through detailed checklists. We know about your properties, and we know how long it should take. The system has so much context about what work needs to get done that it can start to take over and really handle more and more of that scheduling burden and double check your work. Like maybe you've given me, maybe I clean for you and you've given me 5 cleanings today, but they're all back to backs, and there's no way I'm getting, and they're big, and there were big groups that were in there. There were four families were in there with lots of little kids like I have, and they terrorized the place. Like there's no way you're going to get it clean. Surfacing up those alerts to you to make sure that nothing gets missed.
That's awesome. So yeah, that's a great point to bring up, especially, I always go to the customer facing side, and you guys are really at the core an operational platform, and being able to really streamline and make sure that the operations even run smoother and more efficiently than what you normally would, just with just regular human effort. Being able to take these tools is a phenomenal, leg up to be able to be more efficient, turn more properties, operate more properties. And then ultimately, like you said, in some of these businesses, it's not a high margin. And so that ultimately means more money in our pocket when we can do all those things.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think we'll see, these really smart tools and AI really take over, more and more functionality and have a bigger impact. Not just it's going to have a bigger impact in our lives in many ways, but in vacation rentals, I think it's going to be really, really interesting. Much more advanced search. So on the platforms, on Airbnb, on Vrbo, like very advanced search coming, which is going to allow guests and potential guests to really dial in what they're looking for.
Yeah.
Which means, as if you have that supply as a supplier, you're going to need to really make sure you're putting forth that information about your home so that it gets captured in that advanced search. It's going to be wild.
Yeah, it is. And across the board, I couldn't agree more. And we see it, and we as a consumer, it affects everyday life. And then as business owners, being able to tap into it and understand how to maximize it is critical, right? We can't ignore it. You're not gonna, it's here and it's not going anywhere, and it's just going to continue to expand. So yeah, it's a really interesting conversation, Jeremy, and I'm excited to, see what you guys have. Is this a full-on product at this stage, or is this beta testing for you guys, or is this an available product for the consumers of Breezeway?
Yeah, this is an available product, available now. You can configure it if you're a Breezeway customer. And it's really interesting. I didn't tell you one more fun part that we did with it, which is, you can give it a little bit of your company personality. And so it's trained to be a hospitality. When it suggests replies, first of all, you're in control. And so messages won't go out without you proofreading them or taking a quick look, and at least pressing send at this point. They're just suggested replies. And it's trained to be a hospitality professional and use a professional tone. But then you can give your company a little more personality, and you can have it, responds, Western. You can say, hey, I want you to respond like a cowboy because that's my brand. Or, we're LA, we're San Diego surf company. So we want you to imbue a little bit of surf into the messages, and it'll pick it right up and do it. And we had a lot of fun testing that with various celebrities. And political figures, and it was hysterical.
That's pretty fun. Yeah, that's that would be really fun. And what a fun, to just give it your own personality so that it does stay consistent with the brand you've got. I mean, we've all got a brand, and that we're trying to promote and protect. And it's another way to do it, which is a lot of fun, especially when we're trying to say, hey, listen, these are actual responses. If I have to rewrite every one of them, it just takes me more time.
Yeah. You don't want to be in a position to, you don't want to be in a position to rewrite them. And we've seen a lot of success where I think it's about 75% of suggested replies go out without any editing at all. So, the system is providing the right response, and people are happy with it. And then when our agents handle after hours support, I think it's 95% of those issues can be handled without any escalation. So it means we have and some of them are complex. Like, I showed up at the property and it's not clear to me where I'm supposed to park. Right. Yeah. And so they're on the phone talking to our agents. We're looking through the property profile, and we're able to use context from the property profile and information that we have to answer some of these complicated questions. And it doesn't have to go to you, because sometimes people won't read it and they just want to call you.
Yeah. That's awesome. And at the end of the day, that just elevates the guest experience, right? We're continuing to elevate the guest experience is really what all of these things are meant to do. And by doing that, we maximize our assets and our profitability, because that's ultimately what somebody's paying for, right? Is a great experience.
Totally. And the better the experience goes, that extra little lift, especially if you've ever looked at sort of the, because guest reviews used to be, part of my business from the Flipkey days. But if you ever look at Airbnb, look up the dispersion of star ratings.
Yeah.
And it's pretty tight, like a lot of people fall to like the 4, a lot of people fall to basically the same thing. You're in the 4.7 range, but an extra, 0.2 stars on one of the platforms, it makes a huge difference in listing placement. And then depending on listing placement, how much you can charge and what you can do and the revenue and profit that you can bring in from this property, it makes a massive difference. So everything you can do to get ahead on the guest experience, automate pieces of it, and give yourself the opportunity to really be on top of the process, it's a win.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Jeremy, this has been an awesome conversation before. And I'll post all of these places that we want to point people in the show notes for those of you listening or watching on YouTube. But who's the target audience? Like are they management companies for Breezeway? Are they single host owners that are doing this on their own? Is it both? And then also where would you point people if they wanted to get more information on this and feel like this could be a big help for their business?
Yeah, I think it's anyone who wants to be, the people that we work with are the folks who really care about the quality of their operation. They want to deliver a professional, consistent quality experience to their guests. And that ranges from some clients that we have, internationally with 10,000 units to really small folks who have just one. And we really cover the gamut. We work with about 200,000 units worldwide, about 2,000 different managers and hosts on the platform. And you can go to breezeway.io, or you can send us an email at vip@breezeway.io. And, we're happy to talk to you about it. Learn about your business, learn about your home and your property and how you're running it and what we can do to be helpful. Awesome.
Make sure, we'll post breezeway.io and vip@breezeway.io in the show notes for those of you that want to reach out. But it's nice to hear that if a single property owner that's managing their own properties is like, hey, I really want this awesome boutique high-end experience, and these things would be helpful, that these are, because sometimes, Jeremy, when we talk to, different software founders and tools that are out there, it's like, well, if you don't have 10 properties, it probably doesn't work. It's not cost efficient, right? If you don't have a huge enough portfolio, it's not really built for you. And so it's kind of nice when, single property owners can tap into tools like this.
Yeah, we just felt that, this was my experience at Flipkey also. We started with property managers at Flipkey, then we brought in individual owners later. When I was starting Breezeway, we really put an emphasis on making sure that the tools were easy to use. We didn't want to make something that looked like, a database or looked like it was only enterprise level. And one of the real big reasons for that, Sean, was early on, people would come to us and they said, well, this is really cool. Like, this is a problem for us. Man, my cleaners are never, I've tried to get my cleaners to use tools and they just won't. And we said, okay, we'll take a look at this. Like, this is consumer grade, this is really easy, it's friendly, and it's consumer grade so that you can get into it. And that was a purposeful decision for us to invest in the design, because we think that this is, and I think this is bearing out in the market now. It's taken, we've been at this for a while, but professionalism, that consistency, like you mentioned, we've got, the properties are all online now.
Yeah.
Right. And post-pandemic, vacation rental awareness is really high.
Yeah.
Now the game to keep it moving is, how do we make sure that it's a consistent professional experience? No matter if you book somebody who's been doing this for 50 years and they've got 500 units in the Outer Banks, or it's one person who really dedicates themselves to their home in Hawaii and is like really doing a good job. And it's like, both of those are professionals and they've got a place in this industry and they're going to be successful, but they need help.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that you guys were intentional about that, bringing those enterprise level tools to the consumer level as well, which is really awesome to see. And so, guys, again, we'll post breezeway.io in the show notes, and you guys can reach out via email as well, vip@breezeway.io. And Jeremy, at the end of every episode, all of my guests get one question. And so we're going to put you on the hot seat a little bit. And so this is completely unrelated to what we've been talking about, but I always ask everybody, if you could go back and rewind the clock and give yourself a piece of advice that, like, now all the years of knowledge and wisdom and everything else you've gained running down this road as long as you have, going back to your 18-year-old, 25-year-old self and saying, hey, here's something I wish I knew back then that I could take and move forward with. And it doesn't have to even be short-term rental applicable. And what is there anything that comes to mind of a piece of advice you'd give yourself back then?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I didn't get a lot of prep here, Sean, for this.
No,
one.
I know I put everybody on the hot seat on this. So this is kind of off the cuff.
I think it's great. I mean, I think I did a decent job of this as a younger person, but I feel like could always do better, or any moments that I had to do this, I would encourage myself to do it even more, which is, there's just an ocean of opportunity in the world that's available to you if you are ready to dig in and really go for it. And I would encourage my younger 25-year-old self to do just that. And that's what I ended up doing in my career, but I probably did it a little later than I even could have. And I'd really encourage myself to do that and just, dig in, but it takes real effort, don't just go 1 foot deep, get in there.
Love it. I love that advice. And yeah, anything worth doing is, there's always that level of uncomfortableness in the beginning, right? We're not going to be pros at whatever we try new. But, like you said, I couldn't agree more. There's so much opportunity out there. There's so many things that we look at and we question whether we should run down that road. And the road looks a little bit harder than maybe we thought sometimes when we start running down, and you really just have to dive in and dig in and because everything you want is on the other side of some of those tough times and those opportunities. We have all those thoughts, and how many of us have walked by those opportunities and said, maybe tomorrow, maybe I'll do it later, and it never comes to fruition. So great piece of advice. I appreciate that. And everybody listening, hopefully that resonates as well. We're always trying to figure out, those things that we would do a little bit different. And so that we can start living by those words of wisdom. So Jeremy, I appreciate you joining us today. This has been a great conversation. Those of you that are joining us, thank you so much. We know how valuable your time is, and we always appreciate you spending it with us. If you got any value out of the episode, I'd sure love a like or a thumbs up, or subscribe to our channels, whether it's on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform. If you got more than 30 seconds, leave us a review. Those things really do help us. And then at the end of every episode, we always leave you with one challenge, and that is to go pick one thing that you can do today to start building that life you don't want to take a vacation from. Cheers, my friends.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Vacation Rental Revolution podcast. Share this with other people you think need to hear about it. And don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. Hey Grace, is there a website? Yes! For more amazing content and expert advice, visit Vodacy.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.